Welcome to my testimony, and today we have a special couple with us. Yes, this is gonna be a beautiful testimony. We can't wait to get into it. So, without any further ado, I'm gonna introduce Sean and Nadeje Mills. How you guys doing? Welcome to my testimony.
Hi, thank you for having us.
It's good to be here.
Before we get into my testimony, let's bow our heads for prayer. Father, we thank you so much for this beautiful day. Thank you for Sean and Nadeje. We pray that as they share the testimony with us, that our souls will be lifted, that our hearts will be filled, and that the words that they will say to us and the testimony that you have put on their hearts will be a blessing to all of us. We pray in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
So Sean and Nadeje, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah. So I'm Nadeje. This is my husband, Sean. We've been married for about seven years now. We've known each other for about 10 years. We have a very active little 4-year-old daughter, Kenzie, which I'm sure everyone remembers her running around the church. But that's it. That's us.
Kenzie came on the scene. You guys had some difficulties with your first child. Share that with us.
Well, I guess first off, my wife has some health issues that I guess at the time we didn't think would make pregnancy that much more difficult.
Hypertension.
Yeah, hypertension. We knew that it would affect the pregnancy and everything, but we didn't think that it would affect her pregnancy to the extent that it did.
Okay.
And prior to that, she was pregnant once before. I think in 2014, and it was like 10 weeks or 8 weeks or so, and there was a miscarriage, and so that was very emotional for the both of us. And then later on when we're pregnant, she was pregnant for what would have been our son. We went ahead to make sure that we had the right doctors, because we knew that she would have been high risk and everything. So we wanted to have a doctor that specialized in that, or had experience with dealing with things like that. And the pregnancy started off just like any other pregnancy, with morning sickness,
a little elevated hypertension here and there, but nothing that we thought was going to be a big deal. I started on some medications, and then it kind of, things developed to the point where I was at work one day, and then my blood pressure just kind of shot up. It was, if I remember correctly, like 150, something over 100 and something.
Wow.
So I'm a clinical pharmacist. I work at the VA, and my OB was right across the street at Jackson. So then I walk over there, and then they start checking me out, and I get admitted, and then they figure out something's quite not right, because my blood pressure was just staying really, really high despite all the IV medications they're giving me. It just really wasn't budging. So they discharged me. I think I ended up going back. I got discharged that same night. We got home. Right. It was really just enough time for us to just take a quick shower, and then my
having to
blood
go
pressure
back.
was like up again. Ended up at the
Wow.
ICU at Memorial,
Right.
where they started doing a lot more intensive type medications and like monitoring.
Mhm.
And then the OB came over and she explained, well, because of how severe your case is, we really don't have the specialist here at Memorial
Okay.
to really care for you and provide the care that you need, which to us, of course, was just kind of like,
Like you
Yeah,
guys are
exactly.
supposed to,
What
this is
do
a
you do
hospital
next?
and you're telling us that you don't have
Exactly.
someone,
Right.
right.
specialized enough to, treat our needs. And I mean, I get it now,
Mm.
but, you just think, it's a hospital,
Mm.
in a,
Did they send you to?
quote unquote, a good area, so you would think that, they would have doctors who, can treat just about anything.
Right.
Um,
Did
so
they have like a specialist unit that you had to go to another hospital? Did they suggest that to you?
Yes, exactly. So they packed me up in an ambulance from Memorial
Mm.
with all my IVs and everything, and took me to Jackson, where I was
Mm.
before.
Okay.
And coincidentally, the doctor that they were referring us to was Nadeje's OB's doctor from med school.
Okay.
Wow.
What do they
Okay.
call
Wow.
the resident
Fellow.
Mm.
or fellow, one of those things.
Mm.
And he's the best at this. He only deals with high risk pregnancies and high risk cases.
Mm.
And one of my cousins who happens to work down there at Jackson as well, we told her what was going on, and we told her the doctor's name,
Right.
and she knew him. She said, this is the doctor who
Delivered
delivered
her son.
their two children.
Okay.
And she had a host of medical issues during the pregnancy as well that
Right.
she credits him to the birth of their kids. Like if it was anyone else, she really feels that her two children wouldn't be here today.
Mm.
So we felt a lot more at ease,
Right.
knowing having a connection to him already, and knowing what he's already done.
Right.
That okay, well, if this is going to work out, this is the guy who's going to do it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Uh,
Wonderful.
How many months in the pregnancy this happened?
Yeah.
How far along were you?
So we were by the time that I was at the ICU at Memorial and then transferred to Jackson, I was 6 months?
No,
Or-
it was
or a
5
week
months.
shy?
You're like a week shy of
Of
6 months.
being 6 months
Yeah.
pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Did they ever give you the option that you can have a C-section and just deliver the baby and just allow the baby to, thrive that way?
So that came later. Obviously,
well, they did tell me that because I was high risk, I didn't have the option of a natural delivery.
yes.
So all along, the plan was for a C-section. So we
Oh.
knew we were prepared for that.
Right. Okay.
But even a little before that, there was a lot of just trying to maintain her blood pressure. And we were in the hospital for 2 weeks. By the time at Jackson, from the time when we got there that second time till the time we were discharged.
Mhm.
And he's saying we because
Yeah.
he was there
I was
with me
there.
the
Right.
whole time,
Yeah.
sleeping
Right.
on a cot.
Right.
I told
Right
my
next to me.
I just told my job that hey, my wife is having serious complications with this pregnancy, and I'm not leaving her at the hospital by herself.
Right.
Right.
I couldn't live with myself if I was at work and
Something.
something bad happened to her,
Right. Exactly.
and she was just there by herself. I mean, I just
Yeah.
couldn't do that. And thankfully, my job was supportive enough that they're like, look, no, you do what you need to do. Just keep us posted.
Okay.
And yeah,
So-
they
So we got to back to Jackson, and the doctors told us, look, it's going to be a day by day basis. Be prepared to be admitted at Jackson until whenever, right? So
Right.
every day they're just kind of monitoring the baby, monitoring me, until one night they did that test where I forget what it's called, where they test for the fetus's movement, and then he scored really low on that after that exam. After that, they said that they were going to have to rush me into surgery to have a C-section. Right, so we're like calling our parents, like trying to, tell them, give them an update, what's going on, this is what's happening, I'm going in now. And then so we get to they prep me and do my epidural and everything, and then Sean is sitting next to my head,
Right.
and then they're delivering the baby, and then next thing we know, we're just talking like during the whole thing, trying to keep ourselves
Composed
occupied
and
and
just
Right.
zoned in on just well, first and foremost that Nadeje is okay, and secondly, not dwelling on, because we knew that once the baby was born, that it was 5 months and 3 weeks,
yeah.
something like that. That they did the C-section, and we were trying to get to 6 weeks. 6 months.
6 months.
Because the it was a higher percentage chance of viability that if the baby was born early, that they would have a better chance of survival. So we were there trying to make it to that point when they had to go in for the emergency C-section. At that point, they got the baby out. They took him aside and doing all the stuff that they do to babies when they're born, and he wasn't breathing on his own yet because he was still relatively young.
Yeah.
And they had given her shots before, like a steroid or something that's supposed to help develop his lungs a little bit faster.
Right.
And they were over there for maybe 10, almost 15 minutes, just working on him, just trying to get him to breathe steadily on his own.
And we didn't know exactly what was going on. So then they come to us and then they tell us, we've been working on him for the last 10 minutes, and things aren't looking very good. Do you want us to take more advanced measures? And then at that point, I just didn't want him to feel pain. Like at the time, I'm like this little baby who doesn't know really anything, and I don't want the only thing that he knows to be pain, and to feel discomfort. And at that time we were just kind of like, that's it. We don't want any additional measures at this time. And they handed the baby to Sean, right? And he was set. I was still on the table. They rose me up just a little bit, but I was still laying down on the table. And we pretty much just held our son until, just for a few minutes, just while just me, Sean, and our son. That was the time we had.
Right. Yeah, I know. This is difficult. It's difficult for you guys to tell this story. It's.
And during the whole thing, it just, there wasn't even really any time to be emotional, because I was still worried about Nadeje. That she's going to be okay. And afterwards, then we're in recovery, and I'm just making sure she's okay. This was already, by the time the C-section probably happened at close to midnight. And by the time we got to recovery, it was already after 1 o'clock. And so, she was, drugged and everything. So, she wasn't very lucid. Kind of coming in and out of sleep and everything. And, we were just talking a little bit, and I was just sitting there next to her, and just had my head leaning on the bed or on her arm, just kind of dozing off with her, and, waking up and every now and then. And, we just kind of talked a little bit about what just happened, and you know, it was kind of one of those things where at that time it's kind of like I didn't want to think too much about it because
Right. Right.
there was just other more important things, you know, making sure that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
my wife's blood pressure was still okay, and you know that nothing serious was going to happen to her. And you know, she had asked if like, oh well, you know, did we get any pictures or anything? And you know, or actually one of the nurses had asked me if I wanted, you know, to take some pictures. And at the time I was just like, no, that's fine. You know, I just wanted to get back to my wife and everything. And it wasn't until later that Nadeje was like, no, I think you should, because we need to have those. So I went back to the nurse and asked if I was able to, and I was able to take some pictures of him. And
Mhm.
you know, I'm glad that I did, because
Right.
you know,
Right.
I mean, it was a tragic time, but you know, I still like to, you know, go back and at least look at them from time to time and just to say like, this is my son.
Right. 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 So
But
what?
we
What?
eventually made it back to her hospital room, and
Right.
you know, this could have been like 3 o'clock in the morning at that time, and you know, it was just such a long day, such a long night at that time.
And I think that's when it all like finally hit him, and
Mm-hmm.
I was in the bed in the stretcher and
Right.
still with my anesthesia, not able to really move my legs or anything. And Sean was just like on the cot, just like wailing and just crying, and you know, and I couldn't get up, I couldn't go over to him. You know, it was just kind of like, I hear you, honey. I hear you, and I'm right here, and you know, we're gonna get through this
Right.
as best as we can.
Right.
You know, the hospital was very supportive. They told us, you know, and especially the doctor, it's like, you know, no one's gonna rush you guys out of here. Obviously, she needed to be there at least a couple days longer just because of the C-section.
C-section.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they, you know, they have a whole section kind of like dedicated to people who had lost a child, and it's like they have like a little purple butterfly on the door, you know, and
So that anybody comes to the room, they already know, you know, that there's been a loss. So
Yes.
Okay.
the nurses or whomever comes in, you know, they don't come in asking,
Right.
you know, where's the baby? How's the baby? Because
Right.
after you've just had a loss of that magnitude, you know, just that simple thing. And I mean, Sean had to go through that when he went back to work. You know, people were asking him, oh, so, you know, we heard that you were
Right.
that you were on leave, your wife had the baby, blah, blah, blah. And for me, just to some degree as well, like, so how's the baby? You know, and then it's like it's this awkward moment where it's kind of like,
it's like reliving the worst day of your life,
Yeah.
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 like
Yeah.
every hour or
Yep.
every day for like weeks or months, and
Right.
you know. But like I said, they were very supportive, and so we could stay there as long as we needed to, just to like kind of emotionally, you know, get ourselves together. And you know, like I said, we were there for a total of 2 weeks, like a week before the delivery, and then about a week after the delivery. You know, having to deal with the whole funeral.
So the hospital gave us an option. They said that we could either let the morgue handle everything, but we wouldn't know, you know, what happens to our son. We wouldn't have any details or anything. And so, or they said that we could make all the arrangements and have everything done. So thankfully, Sean's mom, she's that type of person who already has everything in line for her demise. She has her plot set out and everything, and with that comes along provisions for any
family
grandchildren.
members.
Is that what
Right.
it is?
Yeah,
Yes,
which
they
is
do.
strange. You would think that there, you know, why would there even be a provision in there for grandchildren?
Right.
But you know, they were able to where it was basically covered under that, you know, a little casket and a little a burial plot that we were able to choose out, and just a couple $100 that we ended up paying out of pocket just to cover a few other things, but
so we had a small little ceremony with the pastor who married us, Pastor Curtis Powell. He came in, did a short little homily. Our close family was there, and so we're, I think about it to this day, and I'm like so glad that we did that we went that route instead of just handing our baby over to the hospital morgue. Such a detached and disconnected process where now every his birthday, which is his date of death as well, March 3rd, we can go and visit him at Forest Lawn. So I'm so, in hindsight, it's like I'm glad that we took that route.
Yeah. So during this time, how is your connection with God with this? Are you asking him why is this happening? What was your conversation with him?
Yeah. You have people who, no matter what happens to them, I like to call them the Jobs, because no matter what happens to them, they're they always find that spiritual silver lining that everything this happened for a reason, and to God be the glory despite everything. And for people who have gone through this, and for people who will go through this after this, realistically, the last thing you want to hear is don't worry,
Part of God's plan.
this is part of God's plan.
Exactly.
It's for me, anytime I heard that, it was really like, really, this was God's plan for my child to die, to be born early and not giving a chance of living. Why would he want that type of hurt for us? Why would he want a child to suffer like that? Not being able to breathe on their own and what have you. If that was God's plan, then it's one of those, like, you really start to question him and the things that happen around you and why they necessarily happen, because none of us are perfect, but in my head I was like, there are people far worse than me out there, and they'll probably live to be 120, and they'll probably die in their sleep or something like that, and here is an innocent child, to people who are trying to have a child, and this is what we have to deal with. It never felt fair to me. It was one of those things where I just really had a hard time not questioning it.
Right.
And it's the where you know the Bible, but then you also know the reality of the hurt that you're feeling, and it's hard to kind of reconcile the two of them together.
Yes.
So it was one of those, God, I know that you're supposed to be in control of everything, that all these things happen for whatever reason, and we don't necessarily know these reasons. And for me, it was kind of like, I'm going to reluctantly trust that you're doing what's best, or that there's a bigger reasoning or bigger plan for this, that that in the end it's all going to work out. It's one of those, like, I don't want to believe it, but I kind of like have no choice to believe it. Like I except it's like reluctantly putting all of my faith into him, because it's one of those times where you don't want to put your faith in him. You want to be upset, you want to be sad, you want to be mad, but I mean, that wasn't going to do anything. It wasn't going to bring our son back. And if I kept dwelling on it, it just probably would have just made me really sour on God altogether. And, and I didn't want that to happen.
Right.
For me, it was, I'll just being completely honest, it was a very disconnected time from feeling God's presence. And it took more of a cerebral kind of I know God exists. I know God is everywhere. I
Right.
know He's here, even
Mhm.
though I don't feel this right now.
Right.
You know, and it was more of like a very mental, not a very, you know, I feel God moving in my life and I see the work of His hand. You know, it was very much of a facts. I
Right.
know God is real.
Right.
Yes.
I know He's here.
Mhm.
And that's just what it's going to have to be right now for me.
Right.
Because with everything going on inside, it's not like Sean said, the pieces are just not coming together with a loving God and this loss, the gravity of this loss. And so hindsight, though, in hindsight, I feel that you know, we've been able to personally, the lessons learned from this whole situation is not that God planned it, not that there's this whole reason behind it, but for me, I take comfort in knowing that God will use this situation, use this very tragic situation to help us as we move forward in our lives.
Right.
And one way that, you know, I've seen it play out is I feel like I am personally able to be more sympathetic to
Mhm.
people who have lost, to who go through loss.
Mhm.
You know, whereas before it's like, oh, there, my condolences, sorry for
Right.
your loss, you
Right.
know. But now it's like
Mhm.
you experience and you share grief with other people differently
Right.
once you've gone through something like this. And then we were able to link up with another couple who had almost like the identical story as ours.
Right.
And you know, I found out about them on a Friday, and then I was like, honey, we have to go and visit with them and just sit with them. And
Yeah.
we did that. And I'm like, look, we don't have anything to offer, but I just came just to hear your story. And I want you to know that we have a very similar story, and
Right.
we're here to cry with you
Right.
and to feel what you're feeling.
Mhm.
Because this is hard, especially when people who, you know, your parents, they feel for you, but they don't. I don't know. I don't know that they feel exactly what we're feeling. Although my mom, you know, after the fact, she's like, you know, to see you, she would say to me, to see you go through this was just so difficult for her. To see me go through this was difficult for her. You know, and I don't get that she felt the loss that I felt, that we felt, you know. So it's, but they had their own you know, emotional everything that was going on with them. My parents are on a different level, and you know, my sister, she had kind of an experience to to a piece of it too. So it's like
Mhm.
all of the family, you know, has some type of, has a different perspective
Right.
on, you know,
Mhm.
this loss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
So, and you guys were raised in the church, right? You were born and raised in the church, both of you.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. So, did you think that helped you through this process? I mean, knowing God since you were toddlers, did this help you through the process? How did this translate to you going through this difficult time?
You know, it's interesting because I think we've talked about something similar to this, you know, over the years. But you know, I always feel that people who born and raised in the church
Mm-hmm.
have a totally different experience than
Right.
people who find God later on. You
Right.
know,
Right.
I think, you know, growing up in it, you know, it's, you know, this is your life, and it's, you take so much of it for granted because
Right.
this is everything. It's like, okay, well, all right, I've got to be home an hour before the sun sets. Okay.
Right.
You know, Sabbath
Right.
lunch is going to be starting cooking on Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, and it's just, you know, you're on autopilot for so much of it, even down to, you know, sadness and all of that stuff. I think for a lot of it, you're on autopilot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you know, and the people who come into it later, you know, there's just so much zeal with everything. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever noticed it, but sometimes they even look at, you know, some of the people who, the people who've grown up into it, and
Right.
it's almost kind of like they're not questioning you, but almost like, well, why aren't you guys as zealous
Enthusiastic.
as I am, or
Right.
whatever? And it's
Right.
like, well, it's like
Yep.
they don't say it, but you can kind of see
Sense
it on
it.
their face sometimes, and it's
Right.
like, well, hey, I mean, I've been in this for 30 plus years now, so I mean, yeah, I
Right.
mean, the zeal is there, but it's just not bubbling over like yours
Right.
is, and but I don't really know if, for me personally, I don't know if being in the church for as long as I have
Mm.
helped or hindered or what have you,
Right.
going through this.
Mm.
Because even to this day, I still, there are still times where, I still struggle. I still question
Right.
God, and I still question,
Mhm.
the whole thing. It's like one of those things like, well, if this was going to happen, then you should have just not allowed us to get pregnant. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, I'm still struggling with trying to reconcile the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where, I can just be like, well, God, it's, truly all in just your hands. It's one of those things that, like I said, I know that, but, and I guess that's it. Just like, I know that, but,
Right.
and I feel like that's kind of like our faith
Right.
for the most part. God wants us to fully trust in Him, and we'll say, God, I do, I fully trust you, but it's like Peter, it's like, no, God, Jesus, I trust you, but
Yeah.
walking on water,
I know.
seriously,
Mhm.
and I feel like that's where I've been for the last 5 years, because he would have been 5 this year,
Right.
starting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He would have started kindergarten this year.
Yeah.
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 But it's just still really hard to try to reconcile everything. It's still hard to have complete faith in Him. That's it's again this is just all part of a bigger design or whatever. It's just still like well, why would this be the design?
Mm.
Yeah.
For me, it was I can what I think having been grown up in the faith makes a difference,
Right.
where after during and after this tragic loss, it's like I know where my help comes from.
Mm.
Where other people who may not have been grounded and rooted in faith may be looking for hope, looking for groundedness in other places.
Mhm.
I feel like throughout the whole process, I always knew that, even though during it I didn't feel God there, but I was having faith. I was hoping that, at some point,
Uh-huh.
I know it'll all kick in, and I know,
Right.
the whole feelings part, I know is not always even the most important, but when you're going through something like that, these feelings are just like looming large over you. It's like everything at the moment. And so I do feel like it made a difference, because I knew eventually, like God would be the one to help with helping us process through this,
Yes.
and in Him helping us to do that, His help comes in different ways.
Right.
Where I had a friend, my parents had a friend who, she specializes in dealing with women who go through this type of loss, and I mean, she was a godsend. She
Mhm.
literally was like an angel.
Right.
She
Mhm.
came to our house,
Right.
like we had a schedule. She would come on Sunday morning. We would sit on the couch and we would just talk. She knows my family very well. She and I didn't have a very close relationship prior to this incident, but
Mhm.
she came, she talked, she told us about these are some of the things that are recommended for people who go through this type of a situation. You want to memorialize your baby.
Right.
And so we have a little thing with his footprints, and I have it in a picture frame. I have it on the desk, sitting on the desk in our home office. And she just gave like little tips like this. She's Seventh-day Adventist as well, and so she
Okay.
was very supportive and encouraging. And so I felt like, you know, she was a gift from God in
Right.
helping me to process it. And with that said, I feel like Sean and we processed it differently, and it's one of those things that you learn like after going through something like this. Like we could share the same exact experience, and our perspective on it is just a little bit different,
Right.
you know, and how we process it
Right.
is just a little bit different, you know. And that's, I don't know, I mean, that just speaks to, I guess, our individuality
Of
Yeah.
course.
and marriage and so forth. But
Yeah.
I didn't anticipate that. You know, I thought that, you know, before going into this, I just thought we would be on the same exact page,
Right.
on the same wavelength. He would understand things exactly the way that I see them, because
Mhm.
it's our experience.
Right.
But
Right.
I've learned that from this, like, we could go through the same thing and still come out with a little bit different of a take home point.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
So,
Of course.
you know, that was, you know, you learn through the
Right.
process.
Right.
So what made you come to the decision to have another baby?
Well, we kind of didn't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It just-
it
It
happened,
was a gift from
I
God.
don't know, like 3
right?
months after.
yeah, like 3 or
3
4 months
months.
after,
Oh, wow.
you know,
Yeah.
and
Before we even really had a chance to like talk about it and say, okay, yes, you know, we want to try again. So, but
Yeah.
she came, and the doctors were on high alert the
I
second
know.
time around.
Right.
I mean, it was like close monitoring. It was the same obstetrician, the same OB,
Okay.
which we were fortunate to have. And so, you know, all the way through, she was born just a few weeks,
she, she, 30. She was born at 32 weeks.
32 weeks.
So
And everything was fine. She ended up staying in the NICU for
13 days.
2 weeks, 13 days.
Right.
And so, you know, after that, we were able to bring her home, and, you know, we were trying to be very cautious, of course, like new parents, you know, but
That whole ordeal was, you know, something else too, because, you know, it's one of those, you want to be happy that, you know, we're pregnant again, but at the same time, we're still grieving the loss of our son.
Right. Right.
And it's kind of hard to do the two at the same time. And, you know, you don't want to think too much about the current pregnancy, because, you know, you don't want to feel like you're just leaving the other one, you're leaving the loss behind.
like you're not
so soon,
replacing
you know, like,
one baby with another. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
just not the thought.
yeah. But then at the same time, you know, you need to concentrate on the current pregnancy, you know, so that the same thing doesn't happen again. So I think for both of us, it was a, you know, like a struggle at first. And I think, you know, as we started going along through it, it was a little bit easier to balance,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially since there was just so much more care that Nadeje needed you know, during the second pregnancy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, you know, making sure she's not doing too much. There's injections that I needed to give her
Right.
every night,
Mhm.
that she absolutely hated, and
I can
you know,
imagine.
wasn't that bad for me,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
you know. But you know, so it's yeah, like you said, you know, thankfully everything was as good as it could be,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And you know, Kenzie came home from the hospital 13 days after being born, and
Right.
you know, we put her in a little, you know, swing or something, and we both kind of look at her and we're like, what do we do now? You know, it's just like a little 4 pound baby just sleeping, and it's kind of like oh, well, we didn't think this far ahead type of thing. Like, well, what what do we do with her now? Like we're really parents now.
Right, right. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so let's go try to figure this thing out.
Right,
And we're still trying to figure it out 4 years later.
right. Well, did you at least get a room ready for her or something, man?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
and that was hard too because we knew how we knew that it was high risk, and it's like you didn't want to have a baby shower, or you didn't want to have too many things in the event that you lose the baby, and now you have all of these things that you can't necessarily get rid of right away to remind you of another tragic loss.
Right.
But at the same time, you want to be prepared.
Right. It's like this cautious optimism that you just have to kind of balance with, okay, we know what happened in the past, but we're hoping, we're praying that things are going to be a lot different this time. So, the timing of things, we didn't want to get her room ready too early, right? We were just kind of like, okay, let's wait until, around this time, and then get the crib together, get, curtains in and that type of thing.
Yep. And we know Kenzie, and we see how she's awesome, the energy she has, and I know she was definitely healing from God. That was your healing baby, Yeah. So
Amen.
Beautiful.
Yep. And man, the story continues. Here we are in 2020, and you guys got COVID. Wow. You contracted the entire family, right? Tell us about that experience.
Yeah. So, man, that was some experience, and it still is some experience. So it was kind of like we said in our other testimonial video. We were at my parents' house for lunch, and then the following Monday she went and she got tested. I was with her at her place of business. She owns a daycare center down in Miami. When she got the call from the center telling her that she was positive, right? So she's on the call. She just drops in her chair, and she's like, "They're telling me I'm positive," and I'm just kind of like shocked to silence. Like, what do you say at that point? And I'm like, "We've been with you all weekend long." So then my mind is just kind of like racing, right? So that was Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday. That was earlier on in the week. So then I, the next day I have to go to work and tell them that I've been exposed and to take the protocols or whatever. So then I have to quarantine. I was already teleworking, which kind of made things, a lot easier. So I was just like, okay, just stay at home, work, and then we'll figure out how things progress. I think I was teleworking just like Wednesday, and then I start feeling just like the chills, the cold, start having fevers. And then it's just like, okay, something's not right here. Like maybe we got this thing too. And then I'm not sure, when did you start feeling symptoms?
Probably within a day or two of you. Before.
So towards the end of that same week.
But Kenzie was the one who had the symptoms first, because then when we found out that Monday, it could have been that Tuesday.
Okay.
Where it was maybe 6 o'clock in the afternoon, like 6 o'clock in the evening. Usually she is bubbly and running around, and she just seemed not herself, just really tired, sluggish, and everything. And all she wanted to do was lay down on the couch and take a nap. And so we knew that wasn't right. And, we took her temperature, and it was like 101. And she's one of these kids that, her temperature can be, 100 degrees right now, and 15 minutes later it spikes to 102 or 103.
Right.
So to see it at 101, it's like, okay, well, we need to go ahead and just get Tylenol and stuff together to make sure that her fever doesn't spike. And, it got up to like maybe close to 103, and we gave her the Tylenol, and she slept for an hour or two, and we got her to bed early, and that was probably the first night in like a long time that she slept in her room by herself the entire night. Usually she wakes up in the middle of the night and would come over to our room, and she just slept through the night, and she woke up the next morning. I think the next morning is when we probably started feeling it a little bit
more.
Yeah, and she woke up and she was totally fine. She came into our room and just jumped into the bed. She's all bubbly and ready to start the day and play and all of this stuff. And we're looking at each other like, this girl could barely keep her eyes open yesterday, and here it is less than 24 hours later, and she's totally fine.
And at that point we are like dragging.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
like,
we were dragging.
Walking around the house like I feel like if there was like a camera or like a fly on the wall or something, they'd be like, what is wrong with these parents? And then this little girl who's just like running around.
She got, right. Wow.
You're talking fevers. I know for me, my fever got up to 103. I had severe chills, body aches, to the point where I was we would have like 3 blankets on our bed, plus I was sleeping in like a long sleeve shirt and my robe, and I'm still like shaking from being so cold, just like my body was just like shivering so bad. It was horrible. Like Tylenol didn't help. Lowered the fever, but still, the body aches were there.
Just back pain that, oh my gosh.
It felt like someone like hit you in the back with a baseball bat. It just hurt so bad. It was so sore. You just could never get comfortable.
Laying down, sitting up, standing down, turning, trying to do like some exercises and stretching, trying to like just get the back to be comfortable.
Right.
It just wasn't, Tylenol wasn't doing anything, and I don't know. So then both of us, like our symptoms started to, worsen, get a little bit worse. And then like I didn't start off with shortness of breath right away. It was, and all the while I'm like thinking, okay, this thing is going to go away. Like we're going to be fine. It's, it's going to be, fine. And then after about like 5 or 6 days, I'm like, it's been 6 days and my fevers have been really high. Maybe I should just go get checked out at the emergency department. So I go to the emergency department. They're like, your lungs sound fine. We could do a chest x-ray if you want. They just kind of left everything up to me. And I was like, okay, well, if you say my lungs sound fine, then maybe I don't need an x-ray. So he was like, okay, you can go home. I was like, okay, bye. Not much more to do.
Right.
So then
I think that's when you got home. At that time, I think I just started experiencing the shortness of breath. We would go down into the garage to do laundry, and just literally walking that like 20 or 30 feet, and I'd get into the garage, and I would sit down there for 2 or 3 minutes just trying to catch my breath, and come back into the house, and I'd have to sit down to like catch my breath, like I just ran a mile or 2 or something.
Wow.
It was crazy. It's like you just feel like you just couldn't get in enough oxygen.
Right.
And it was at that point where I think at that point she started to have some of the shortness of breath, like a couple of days after me. The fevers weren't going away. It's to the point where she started sleeping in another room where we had, at that point, like my fevers had started going away. I still had the chills and the aches, and I was having the shortness of breath, but she was having the shortness of breath and a lot of congestion. And so she was sleeping in another room, and we had the humidifier going, helping her just get the moist air down into her lungs, just to help her breathe a little bit better. And she wasn't getting better. She still had the high fevers. Even with the Tylenol, it would bring it down, maybe about down to 100, but that was
101, and then right back up. And then, the shortness of breath just started to get worse. So then I said, okay, I was like, honey, something is not right. I'm walking down the hallway, and it's just like, I feel like I'm not even able to keep my stability to walk. And I'm
Right.
like, something really is not right. So I go get checked into the emergency department a second time. And then they're like, they do the chest x-ray this time, and they
Uh-huh.
say, and they do a COVID test, and they're like, yes, you're COVID positive and you have pneumonia. So I'm like, okay. So then they say, we have to keep you overnight just for observation, just
Okay.
to see, how you do. They give me the steroid, dexamethasone, and that helped tremendously with the shortness of breath, right?
Right.
So
Mhm.
start feeling better the next day. And then they discharged me. They had to do I don't remember what it's called, a walking test where I had to walk for like 6 minutes or something like that and make sure my O2 sats don't drop below
Mhm.
a certain number. So I passed that test. They were like, okay, you can go home. So Sean came and picked me up,
Mhm.
went home. At home, I continued to get worse. Like the shortness of breath came
Wow.
back, and it felt like it came back even worse than it was before. Like I had a hard time even talking.
Mhm.
Anytime I was trying to talk or say anything, the just it just felt so tight, and I would start talking and coughing all at the same time. And I felt like it was wearing on me just
Mm.
emotionally, being
Right.
so sick for the past like 10 days, where literally I just get up and lay down on the couch, and that's it. That's all I could do. And then, I just kind of broke down a little bit, and I'm like, honey, like I'm so worn out by this. And I wasn't even admitted in the hospital for the third time yet. And I thought,
Mhm.
man, when is this thing going to end? So then my mom comes and swoops in, because that's what moms do.
Right.
And she comes and
Yeah.
she's like, you need to come to my house, and I'm going to take care of you, and this and that. So then I go to her house. I think I spent like 2 nights there.
2 or 3.
And I'm Haitian. My parents were born in Haiti.
Mhm.
So she's doing all
The mix up.
Herbs and
Haitian
spices and
remedies.
Mix
rubs.
everything up,
She's
right? Right.
massaging my feet with oil,
Mhm.
and she's rubbing me down, like putting castor oil
Mhm.
like on the top of my head. Not sure exactly what it does, but that's just what Haitians do, right?
Right.
So she's doing this, and she like would do a bowl with like herbs and that type
Right.
of thing, and I put a towel over my head
Yep.
and just like, inhale
Yep.
everything and
Clear
get
you
it
up,
deep
right?
down. And so she's doing all of this. 2 nights I'm at my mom's house, and I continue to get worse. Like I'm walking at my mom's house, I'm getting like more unsteady, more unstable. And then mom is like, I think you need to go to the hospital again. And I'm like, you know what? I think so too. So then she drives me home. I just pack a bag, and then Sean takes me back to the hospital and back to the emergency department. At that point, I couldn't even like
She could
talk.
barely walk at that point.
I couldn't even talk. I couldn't walk.
She was so out of breath, taking like 5 or 6 steps that just in the house, we just had her sit. If she needed to walk anywhere, it was, I was walking with her.
My O2 sats while here at home that morning was dropped. Normal range is like 94.
94 to 100.
94, 94, 95. My O2 sats dropped to 91, 92, somewhere in that range. And I could just like Sean said, I could barely talk. So at that point, we pack up in the car,
Right.
takes me to the emergency department. They bring out a wheelchair. I get into the wheelchair, then Sean like has a whole dictation of like everything that she was admitted, her O2 sats is this, her blood pressure is that, and
medications that she had taken while she was at the hospital before.
Yeah, because I could barely talk, and so he talks to the nurse, and he tells the nurse, this is what's going on with her. She was admitted before, she's got pneumonia, she's got COVID. So then they take me into the emergency department again. This is my third time at the emergency department. It's so crowded. I am in a hallway bed Like not even with a little bay with like drawn curtains or anything. I'm just in a hallway with another bed in front of me that's in the hallway and a bed in front of that that's in the hallway.
Wow.
So, and the nurses are just
Okay.
kind of coming around with the carts and, you know, just drawing blood and, or
Wow.
doing x-rays and all of that. But it's all just kind of like an open, you know, free for all. Everybody who's
Wow.
sick and just,
Wow.
you know, just there.
Mm.
So I stayed there for a few hours. It felt like maybe like 4 or 5 hours there because I think they were trying to get a room ready. And then the doctor came and he was like, you know what, we're gonna have to start you on some of the IV medications. We're gonna have to do the remdesivir, the convalescent plasma, dexamethasone, and
Mhm.
you know, I was like, at that point, I was just like, okay, look, let's just do whatever we need to do
Right.
because I feel terrible.
Right.
I just feel I want to feel more like myself again.
Right.
So then I get admitted. They start the therapies right away. That night they start the remdesivir, and I had to sign all these papers. And I think the point that just like hit me the most was the doctor calls the room because you know nurses and doctors as much as possible they're not trying to come into the room. They do to bring you medications and to do blood draws and that type of thing.
Okay.
But when they can, they're
Mhm.
just calling you either on your cell phone or on the room phone.
Oh wow.
So the doctor he calls and he's like, listen, like your respiratory status right now is pretty dangerous. Like it's
Mm.
life threatening.
Wow.
And at that point, I'm like, okay, because prior to that, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna get meds. I'm gonna feel better, and
Right.
you know, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna be okay. And then he's like, we're gonna start. We have these three medications that are available. That we need you to sign for the convalescent plasma. Um, because I think it was still experimental or investigational at that point, and
Okay.
you know, I'm like, okay, I'll take all three options. And, you know, I tried to call Sean over the phone because, of course, family is not allowed, not even in the hospital, much less in that room.
Right.
So then I'm calling Sean. I have the oxygen mask on, and then trying to tell him everything. And he's like, babe, I can't hear you. Like, I can't understand because I could barely talk. There was a lot of noise from the oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So then I text him, text him everything and just to kind of tell him, these are the three options. He's saying this is really dangerous. So we start the therapies, and to me, what stands out at that point was having to have such an important conversation with my husband via
Right.
text message.
I know. Wow. Yeah.
By text message, just because I couldn't talk and he's not there.
Right.
And when I was in the emergency department earlier, he's like, I need you to fight, and I'm like, honey, this is hard. Like,
Mhm.
I feel just like terrible. And he's like, I know it's hard, but I need you to fight, and I felt like that just like really gave me, like, okay, I gotta, as hard as, it feels, as uncomfortable as this is with my breath and not breathing and, just trying to fight through this, being conscious. It's like you're willing yourself to breathe every single breath.
Mm.
Like you sit here right now, you're talking and
Right.
you're breathing involuntarily. It's just
Right.
happening.
Right.
But when you have this infection, it's like every breath is a chore,
Mm.
and you are trying so hard to take the next breath in, and you can let that one out. Take the next one in. It's a fight. It's a struggle to breathe.
Right.
So I get the medications, and then I know we've got like family, church members, everybody's just like praying and sending text and
Yep.
lifting me up. And
Right.
I mean, I could just, I felt the support, I felt the love. And one of the doctors came into the room and they were like, okay, we've given you these three medications, the remdesivir, the plasma, the dexamethasone. And he's like, you know what, based on how things look, we're going to have to add a fourth one, the tocilizumab. And then he says that he's like, if the tocilizumab doesn't work, we're going to have to maybe put you on a ventilator. And I'm like, at that moment, I'm like, well, God, you're going to come through. You're going to have to come through, because, I really have no other source of help right now. I'm helpless. There's nothing I can do for myself. There's nothing anybody else can do for me. So, at that point, I know everybody's just kind of praying and lifting me up. And, I start to feel like my breath is getting a little bit better, probably like day 4. I was able to sleep without the oxygen mask.
Okay.
And then I spent the whole day without the oxygen. And, I gradually, thank God, started to get better. And, as a clinical pharmacist, I keep up with medications and so forth. And, a lot of these studies are coming out now with New England Journal of Medicine, saying they compared patients on convalescent plasma to placebo, and there was absolutely no difference. And there was, some information with remdesivir, it not being as robust as they thought it would be. And to me, that's just like more confirmation that, God is the one that saw me through this. Although, I took the medications, and I was being lifted up. I was being, cared for from a distance, but to me, it just confirms that, God is the one who helped heal me and get me better.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I was discharged, came back home. Sean was holding down the fort while I was away, admitted for 5-6 days in the hospital.
Kenzie is a chore for both of us.
Right.
To have all of that
Right.
on one person is just totally unfathomable.
Right.
Because I was still not 100%.
Right.
I mean, no fevers or anything at that point, but I was still having a lot of shortness of breath, and I was still having some aches. But this girl needed attention. She needed, something to keep her occupied. It's kind of like when we had started taking up like gardening, kind of like maybe like May, June of the pandemic. And so at that point, like every day in the afternoon, we'd go out in the backyard. She'd go running around. I'd go look at my squash and cucumber plants to see how they're doing. I'd let her help me water them, things like that. So, got us out of the house. You got her out, get some oxygen, get some fresh air, get some vitamin D from the sun.
Good.
Every day is asking, when is mommy coming home? I miss mommy. And like, well, I don't know. Mommy has to get better first. So, Nadeje would FaceTime us maybe twice during the day, usually around like bedtime. So Kenzie could see her before bedtime.
Right.
But it was rough. And, thankfully, my family, my mom and dad would bring by some food for us.
And then the Allens too.
Yeah. The Allen, brother and sister Allen, they brought by like 2 bags of food. Everything. And like coconut water and fresh fruits. And it was here for me and Kenzie because Nadeje was in the hospital, but some of it was so good. I was like, no, I got to save a little bit for her when she comes back. She's got to taste some of this stuff. It was really good. Right. But it was such a help. My brother would go to the grocery store for me when I needed something. So it was just great to know that you have a good support system around to help you weather the storm. Yep. Exactly. I feel like that makes all the difference because I know there's people out there who don't have that. They may not have a good relationship with their family, or they just may not have family around at the time. And that really does make a big difference.
It does, and a church family as well. That makes. I got so many text messages from people at church who I really know on just a hi-bye basis, and then there are those that from the marriage retreats that we've been to that have gotten to know a little bit better. But just like the text messages with encouragement and prayers, and they were praying over me through a text message, and just the power of it. I felt like, they may as well just been right next to me with their hand on me and just praying over me.
Amen.
So, and that made such a huge,
Yeah.
such a significant difference.
Yeah. So
Wow.
through these Job, what do you call these?
Job
The
experiences.
Job experiences.
Wow.
What would be your
Advice.
advice?
Advice to those that are
Yeah.
going through something similar or are facing something like
Yeah.
COVID
Yeah.
and don't know what to do.
And you guys are a young couple.
Yeah.
You're young and you've been through so much already.
So much.
People your age and younger, what would you tell them
Yeah.
when they go through trials like these?
Well, on the COVID front, I would say, really just take it seriously. Look, and I tease Nadeje all the time. It's like, we don't know what we're thinking, listening to our parents about, drink this, rub that. And, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, those are old, Caribbean things that, some of them may have some anecdotal evidence of maybe doing something, but no amount of CT, no amount of,
Right.
herbs and stuff is going to make you feel better. Because, I mean, some of those things
Well, I think it probably depends on the severity as well.
Well,
yeah,
that too. But I mean, so many things we were taking, as soon as we found out that, we were sick, and I mean, just really and truly, it didn't help. So I don't want people just wholly trusting and relying on that stuff, because it's going, for a lot of people, it's going to take a lot more than that.
Maybe for some, I think it helps to build, the immune system and keeping you healthy.
Right.
Although I think to the point as severe as we were, I think we were too far gone for those therapies. Like I needed something a little bit more intensive to help with me, but I wouldn't entirely knock.
Look,
being a pharmacist, you would think I'm the one who's the druggist.
You're talking about there's literally a difference of maybe about 4 or 5 days. When she's saying like, oh well, if from when she was sick to when she was like in crisis. So I'm saying don't rely on it just for that, because you could be just like her, where you're taking that stuff and you're just sick, and you could wake up the next day in respiratory distress.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That
rapidly.
It'll develop rapidly, and I'm saying just don't rely just on that. If things are getting bad, then you need to go ahead and get the help that you need.
Right.
As far as losing a child, I wouldn't wish that on even my worst enemy. It's just such a devastating thing to have to deal with, and after us, like she told you that there was one of her friends or someone on her that she met through her mother that had the same experience, and then several months after that, one of my close friends, they had an experience. I mean, their child was older, but had complications at birth, and they were in the hospital for months, and for actually like over a year, and they had just got her home from the hospital, and the baby was like 17 months old when she passed away at the house. So that just right there are two families that we were able to share our experience with, share in their grief,
right, and build a small little community of support, of love, of understanding. Because it's one of my friends, she was like, everybody that I talk to, nobody really truly understands the experience unless you've lived through and you've gone through that type of experience. So I mean, if anybody who has had that experience, I would encourage them to reach out reach
Share
out
it.
to us,
Yeah.
get our contact information. We are more than happy to just sit with you, listen to your story, share ours.
Yes.
I can't say that we've done everything perfectly after
Yes.
the fact. But it's been 5 years now, and
Mhm.
we're still processing
Right.
through it, and
Right.
it's gonna be something that sticks, with you. One of the church, I think I shared this our story at one of the women's ministries, and then women's ministry meetings, and then another sister in the church, she shared she had a similar story, which happened, I think it was, she
Right.
said, like 25 years ago,
Mm.
and she still remembers it, fresh in
Right.
her mind. And so, she helped me where, I'm like, man, this is like a lifelong thing. This is
Yeah.
a journey. It's not just an experience, an isolated experience that you go through and then, whoop, that's it. It's
Right.
something that you're going to continue needing to process through almost for your entire life.
Yes.
And that you're going to need all the support if it's a
Mm-hmm.
small community, your personal relationship with God, and building strength from there, building hope from there,
Right.
with your husband. So I think I would say, anybody going through that, you've got to get the help. Don't feel like you are an island by yourself. You're not going to be able to make it.
Yeah.
Right.
You really won't. You need people. You need support.
Yes.
And share your stories, because there are so many people out there who don't realize that they're not the only ones who have
Right.
gone through this, and it really helps to know that there are other people out there who have unfortunately shared in that type of a tragic experience, but it helps lift your load a little bit. I know especially in the Caribbean,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Community, things like this tend to be just kept in
Brushed
silence.
under the
It's,
rug.
it happens, and like,
Just move
oh, I
on.
haven't seen you for like the last
Right.
like 3 weeks at church, whatever. It's like, oh, I just needed some time by myself.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's we don't want to let people in, but really and truly that's what we need.
Yes.
Because just you just saying it to one person, you find out that other people have had that same experience and can help you
Yep.
navigate through it. And
Yes, it's true.
you're going to meet people who experienced it after you, that you can help navigate through it. So I mean, we need to remember to help out our community, help out our church family, and our friends, everyone that
Yes.
hey, we've gone through this terrible thing, and we hear that you had too. We're here for you.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Wow.
Wow, what a
Yes.
testimony.
What a testimony. Yep. And
Incredible.
Sean, I heard that somebody told me that you're a chef, man. You can cook up some things, man. So we got a hook, man.
I've been known to do that from time to time.
Okay.
And,
Right. Yeah. So
I'll see what I can do for you guys one of these days.
yeah, man. So yeah, after this whole pandemic has passed, man, we got to definitely get together. So
Yes.
Yeah.
But just want to really thank you guys
Thank
for
you
sharing
so
your story.
much.
I know that this was very tough.
It was.
This is not easy to tell, but as you just said, it's a story that needs to be told.
Yep.
And so that we can help each other in the community.
Yeah.
And in this world. So thank you guys so much again for coming and sharing. During
Absolutely. Our
This.
pleasure.
Our
Thank you
pleasure.
for having us.
Yes. Yeah. So.
All right.
All right. So Dawn, you pray to close this out.
Sure.
All right.
Loving Father, we thank you so much for this testimony. What a powerful testimony. And Nadeje and Sean have been through so many things, and I ask just for peace. I ask for clarity for them. I ask that you continue to comfort them as they go through every single day of remembering and reliving the situations that they've gone through, that you're able to show them who you truly are through this.
Yes.
And all those that are watching, I ask, Lord, if there are those of them that have been through this, that they have been able to see, wait, I'm not alone in this.
Yep.
Not only are you here, God, but I can reach out to this couple too.
Yes.
So bless every single one that's involved in this. Bless Nadeje and Sean and their family.
Yep.
Continue to bless all those that watch, and help us, Lord, that when we go through these trials, that we remember you, and that you're able to help us to know what is the next thing we need to do. How do we deal with this? And what it is you want us to learn from this, so we can be truly, truly able to be totally connected with you and able to see your hand in everything that we go through. So I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Amen. Yes, so thank you guys so much again.
Yeah.
And happy holidays. Enjoy the rest of the holiday season.
Happy holidays to you too.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll get together. As I said, man, right after this thing is past, man, we're gonna get together, man. So
For
we're gonna cook some food together, man.
Problem.
and have a great time. So thank you guys so much again, and God bless. Okay.
God bless. Take care.
God bless you too. Thank you very much for having us.